Good afternoon, everybody. This is Richard G., and this is Jersey Talk Radio. We're coming to you from the Flemington Car and Truck Country Broadcast Center at 127 Main Street in Flemington, New Jersey. This is my show. It's called As I See It, and my guest today is Michael, and I learned how to pronounce his name, and now I've just forgotten about it. So here's Michael. Michael, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Great. Thank you. Richard, thank you for inviting me today.
Sure.
I am Michael Kurzrock. I am the Director of Business Operations for Optimal Computing, and also the founder. Optimal Computing provides computer services for you, for your business and home computing. We provide a range of services that we offer both online via remote safe access, and as well will come on site. And again, that's both for the home and as well for small businesses.
Mm-hmm. And I forget, I remember reading a couple of years ago about how much money was wasted in repairing computers because of viruses.
Yes, actually it's a growing epidemic. It's been growing for a couple of years. There's an average of about 390,000 viruses a day that are created, or 12 million a month, or about 150 million a year, and no one can keep up with that. And that epidemic is growing even more for the home and for small business users. And the reason why I founded the company, I have well over 20 years experience in computing and security and providing solutions to major corporations who literally have an army of people and staff and a large budget, multi-million-dollar budgets to prevent things like viruses and hackers. Of course, they still have issues, as we read in the papers. But the home and small business user, this year alone, the statistics are that up to 50%, or one half, of the people who access or are connected to the internet will face a serious and catastrophic virus and or ID theft. So that's stolen information, credit card theft, ID theft, fraud, their social security numbers, their children's information, and anything that an organization can get.
You know, it's funny. I worked for a short while over at the Princeton Packet. I was doing their web. I was their webmaster, and one of the guys that worked with me used to dumpster dive and find computers and rebuild them and sell them. Mm-hmm. He said he couldn't believe behind a building, some company, all the financials are still left in the computer. He said I cleaned them out, but they were there.
Right. Yeah, that information is very critical to destroy. And the old saying used to be to the only way that you could protect your information that was on a hard drive was either to shred it or bury it in the desert. Mm-hmm. Because the fact is that nothing, especially today when one access the internet is connected to the internet, whatever they're doing on the internet or their hard drive, there's duplicates of that being made.
Okay. And I know we don't want to scare people.
Well,
because I'm going to tell you, I think the internet's terrific.
Yes, it is.
And I think things like email and all that, I'm not so big on Facebook and some of those places, but email keeps me in touch with people that I would have never been in touch with. In fact, I had people that I went to high school with that found me, and we now talk maybe once or twice a month.
Sure. No, it's a great place, and all the social media that exists out there. Absolutely, it's a wonderful world in a way.
Yeah.
But also, as it's in a wonderful world, there are many bad, or we'll call black type organizations out there, whether they're for a particular cause or to get money or to get your information or to create fraud. They're out there not only building viruses. They're out there trying to get your information to be used in a lot of ways. So, yes, it's a wonderful world on the internet, but at the same time, one needs to be, whether it's a home user or a small business user or a large corporation, careful and have best practices, as we call it.
True. And as you said before, I think everybody's going to run into a virus now and then. I don't know how you can avoid it. I was just telling you that I got a virus when I was getting these little sound bits to put on the radio, and one had a virus attached to it, and suddenly boom, 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 and it said my screen was frozen, and and I couldn't. And then they wanted me to go buy some kind of MoneyGram or something to send them the money, and they would free it up.
Yes, ransomware.
Yes.
That's the official terminology.
Okay, then they would
Yes.
free it up. And
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I had some friend of mine who does this kind of work take it off. And they said, do not take this off. Don't try to, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But here I am in a place that I thought would be okay. You know.
Sure. Yeah. Here I am in this business for the amount of years, and I run a business of with technical staff full time that help others. This past Friday, my wife, who I love very much, she has a Mac, a brand new one, which she keeps very secure. In fact, in the house, we don't even know her password.
Okay.
She wants to make sure that it is secure. But on Friday afternoon last week, she got a virus. In fact, it was more of a ransomware virus. So
One of
of course
those.
she called me, and I looked at it. Sure enough, there was a phone number to call, a number of screens that one normally wouldn't be able to get out of. And we called the number. I decided to play on it and see who it was. And it happened to be one of the typical things that happen when you get a screen like that, where you dial the number, you end up at some a call center that is someone from another country,
Right.
that then tells you, talks to you about the company, the problem that you have. In fact, this particular one said they were from Microsoft.
Okay.
From Microsoft. So, well, is there some comfort level there? Of course, I didn't have the comfort level. And we played this further. In fact, we're going to do a recording of this kind of similar thing and put it on our website. So I went further and had a conversation. They asked me the problem. I identified it.
Did they want to get in on your computer?
Well, that's the first thing that they try to do. They try to access your computer,
Yeah,
and they tell you,
okay.
and there is a way that they know and that we all know that are in the business, how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step after that is that they take over your computer remotely, illegally, and then they get all your information. Or while you're talking to them, they may ask you for money or to go to a website, and maybe $250, $300. It depends on what organization is doing this at the time. And this is happening, by the way, not just to one individual. It's happening to millions
Well-
that they've created, and they have telecenters that they're running out of the country.
A few weeks ago, I had a phone call. The guy said he was from Microsoft and that they'd found there was a virus on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, what? You wouldn't need to get on my computer?" And I kept him going, and I finally said, "Well, you're a fool because I don't have any computers."
Very-
and then
good.
he slammed down the phone.
yeah.
But he said he was from Microsoft.
Sure.
Same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing.
I've read about this. They want
Sure.
to get into your computer, and then they got control.
Right. Well, one of the things that could have been prevented in this particular situation is that, like many, my wife was very protective of her computer. And even when she like many, sees security updates or any kind of updates, she doesn't click them because
Right.
of the
Yeah.
effect that it might change or happen. Well, sure enough, we did some further investigation, and most likely she had gone to a site, looked like a government site, to look at an article on abused animals,
Mhm.
which was, again, very innocent, which then caused the virus. But had she done updates, in fact, on this particular Mac, she hadn't done updates in a number of months. Again, didn't want to click that button because of fear of something happening. Had she done those and had a security update or done the security update and loaded that onto her computer, this particular virus would have never happened.
Yeah, it would have caught it.
It would have caught it.
But what I think people don't understand, if they say, "Well, I've got software that protects me," well, if you don't update your software, it's not going to protect you.
Exactly. And one of the things, you mentioned that, Richard, we started a series of webinars and seminars, and we're presenting to some smaller institutions as well, more for an education. We believe that education is very important in this, along with all the other services that we provide. But if we can help the home and the small business unit prevent these types of things, or at least minimize, nothing's 100%, they're in a much better place, and they can enjoy that wonderful world of the internet.
Mhm.
So we're offering, we have a series that we provide. We have a webinar that's pre-recorded on our website that goes through best practices. We call it actually Computer Security 101, and it's really best practices for the home and business user. Things that the user can do, basic things whether it's related to passwords or their internet access or what sites they go to, or doing updates, as you say, or having a good antivirus, anti-malware software installed, or doing backups. We can talk about each of these
Sure.
in more detail.
Sure.
But these are some of the basic things that users need to do in order to minimize the risk. Again, nothing's 100%, but to minimize, instead of being that 50%, as I stated before, of users this year that will experience a devastating virus, I call it an F5 tornado on their computer, or ID theft, they might very well be able to prevent it by doing some best practices.
And that's important. It's not, you get your computer, you get it plugged in, but you still got to be very aware, especially if you're going on the internet. And I think everybody is. I mean, it's just incredible. And once again, I was doing a talk years ago about, I used to do a lot of websites, and I was giving a talk, and somebody said, isn't the internet just all porno? And I said, there are some silly things about the internet, and there's some great things about the internet. I said, let me ask you this. When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, how long do you think it was before there was an obscene phone call made? And
Right.
they all just said, oh, yeah, well, because you're going to get that. You get the good with the bad. I'm sorry.
Sure.
But I think the internet, as I said, with emails, is just, I live by email.
Yes. Some of the basic best practices for email is, one, if you don't recognize the address, more than likely delete it.
Yes, get rid of it.
If you do recognize the address and it looks like a message that you need to click to, make sure that you understand what that click is to. There have been a lot of recent crimes and scandals on the internet where, in fact, people get a email that looks like it's from their bank, or it looks like it's from an institution or
Sure.
someone they're doing business with already on the internet. And once they click on that email, because of course that email itself just says you need to go here, you've had a security issue,
Right.
or you need to change your password, or you need to go to this site to provide us your information. Be wary of that, because even when you click, in many cases, these individuals that are on the dark side who want your information have created a mirror website
And it's
of some of the major banks in the country.
and it's so easy to do.
Mhm.
All you got to do is do a the name, just want to hit the button and get your screen. And you just go to that website, hit a button, and it copies the screen. And then you go to Photoshop or whatever, a screen capture. You can do a screen capture. Go to Photoshop and create something that looks very legitimate.
Right.
It's very simple to do.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things we talk about in best practices is when you go to a site, any site, make sure that it's at least secure, and you can do that in a couple of ways. One is it will have a trademark, whether it'll say SSL, or it'll have a little sticker at the bottom, a little emblem, which will say that it's secured. And there's a number of companies that do that. The second is when you look up on the left-hand corner where your access point is to whatever website it is, it's actually written, so it'll be https:/// and then www whatever
Right,
website
right.
you're at or wherever you are. Make sure there's an S
Yeah.
at the end of that.
HTTPS.
Right. And there should be also a little lock as well before that HTTPS. That gives an added level of security. It doesn't mean that everything is always, again, completely secure, because you've also then got to watch what you do. And aside from that, there's this thing called cookies, which exist out in the world,
Yeah.
which can also create havoc, because in fact, almost every organization that exists out there, and I won't name some of the larger brands, but most of those companies have a methodology where they download a file onto your computer, and they actually record your information, your habits, your information,
Where you go and all
where
that.
you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Right, and that also creates the adware. We actually have a product at Optimal Computing that we install on computers. It's a minimal cost that actually helps end users, small businesses, from having those things happen. It actually literally blocks those types of things from happening, and actually changes what's called their digital signature, which is their identification to those sites. So it prevents not only creates less adware so that the adware can't be created, but also prevents information from going out. So people can still have that, as we call it, the wonderful world of the internet,
Right.
have that experience with a minimal level of, being
Now,
worried.
most computers, you can turn the cookies off.
Well, it's not about turning the cookies off, because in fact, what we find is that most computers that we look at, and in fact we offer free diagnostic just to look at what exists there. Most of the computers that we look at have so many cookies already there, so many programs running. Or people don't realize the computer is running slow, not because the computer's old,
No.
because sometimes we run into a computer that's a month old, or maybe it's 10 years old. It really doesn't matter. It's about what's running. So there could be 50 some applications running, although they think they're only running Outlook, or they're on their Facebook account. But in fact, over history, they've created a number of files, number of those cookies that sit there. So first, number one, everything has to be cleaned. And we provide that also at a very low cost. That's probably one of the most important things to do. And it's not just about installing an antivirus or anti-malware software, or something that prevents cookies. And there are certain things that you can do on the computer as well to maximize the security and lower the number of cookies.
Sure.
You can turn off cookies, but then you also turn off the experience, because a lot of organizations require that.
I know.
So your banks require you to have cookies. Your Amazon or any of the other sites you go to, many of them require cookies, because that's part of the experience that they require. Some information. Some of it's built on security. Some of it's built, again, getting information and then taking your information and moving that across to their marketing department,
Exactly.
or perhaps selling it to other organizations.
Sure.
Sometimes in a good way, and sometimes again in a bad way, where that information then goes across to an area and a group or an organization, and then takes that and builds it into the the emails that you get that you don't want to get, or another type of cookie or piece of information that they can then access your computer.
I think one of the things that I really want you to mention is the fact if you get any email and you don't know who it's from and it's got a link, don't click on the link.
Yes, click. I say click to agree. Click. Think. The brain should think before pushing a button. That is, Richard. That is so
Yeah,
important.
don't look at that link and go,
Right.
see who it's from first.
Right. And that not only goes for clicking in an email, but clicking on a website, clicking terms and conditions, and we all do that. So and the general practice today for companies is to just put all their terms and conditions, and they list it. And actually, a lot of it's hidden, and it may be hidden in a secondary area where you may not even read it, but it's sitting there, at least the first 10 sentences, and who wants to read 5 pages of terms and conditions? So you go down to the bottom of it, you click and you agree. Many times that also then creates another event. In fact, a click to agree always creates another event. Either puts you at a website, either agrees that you purchased something, or may even agree in a trial period. Oh, this is free, but they want your credit card and information, and there's no charge, but in the terms and conditions, after 29 days, you get billed. And if you don't look at your credit card,
if you don't go cancel it,
if you don't go cancel it,
Yeah.
and you have a problem canceling, because some of these companies are very difficult to find. You call the phone number. First, you go to their website, and what happens? You can't get to them, so you call the number, and you go in this cage of I call it the bingo cage of numbers that you have to go through, and you end up getting frustrated. And it's very difficult to actually do that cancellation.
Actually, I've never, and I probably never will put a credit card into anything on the internet. And that's not that I think that everybody's dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't know who's monitoring what's going on. I've used one of the safest, and maybe you might disagree with me, is PayPal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've used PayPal, and I do it a lot if I'm going to be in an art show.
Sure.
And there's usually an entry fee, and it's like $20 or something, and I'll go through PayPal, and PayPal basically just goes to my checking account and takes the money.
Right.
I had once that somebody somehow got in and bought $80 worth of something, and I contacted PayPal and said that's not me, and they canceled it and they paid back the money right away.
Sure. You know, again, you mentioned earlier, we don't want to make people feel like it's unsafe
No,
to go
no.
on the internet, but having good practices,
Just be
you know,
aware.
some things, be aware, going to a reputable site, you know, a PayPal or a reputable site that, you know, an Amazon where, you know, literally their security is as best as it can be. And again, nothing is foolproof because
No.
you're putting in your password and your information, your credit card information, and perhaps it's secure there, but also at your computer or your your smartphone. We all have smartphones.
Some of us do.
Yes, some of us do, right. Or
still-
iPads or
Yes.
portable computers. They're all susceptible to something. But having a good antivirus, anti-malware program, ensuring that there are basic practices, passwords we'll talk about in a minute because that's a whole nother topic. But ensuring that they're going to a site that's reputable, where that S is again, or where there's a lock on the site, being ensured that even their internet access, where they are. So if you're at home, and we teach this in our education academy, the internet itself, where you're connected, whether you're at home and you have a router, make sure that router, your connection out to whether it's Comcast or Verizon or whatever company you use for your internet access, make sure that in front of that, from your home in, that you have something there, a router, a firewall that is secure.
Sure.
And secure is also going to passwords for a minute, because this is kind of a pet peeve I have, in that the home user especially, and some business users, generally will install a router or firewall, or they'll let an outside company do it, but they don't change the password that allows them the administrative level to get into the router. So one area of potential breach, or an area that is insecure or possible that someone may get access, whether it's an individual user trying to get access or a group or whatever, is to change that password and not keep it as password, because in many cases, a lot of the manufacturers send out the router or the firewall with a basic password, which is easy for anyone to get access to. The other part of the internet access, not only in the home or the business and protecting there, is free Wi-Fi. I say free Wi-Fi is free viruses.
I agree.
So to make sure that whether it's at Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts or
Panera.
any of the Panera or any of those places, that it's also secured, that there's at least a password that's required. Otherwise, you're open to anyone else that might be listening with their devices, and it's very easy to do that, whether you're at the airport, whether you're on a plane. In fact, whether you're connected to the internet or not, it's important to make sure that your computer itself, from a physical standpoint, is secure, that no one has access to watching you, to being able to walk by and take a picture of whatever you have on the computer. Again, that could be your password, that could be information that you don't want anyone else to see.
My in-laws, who are in their late 80s, do not have internet. But my son was up there one time with his laptop, and he said, well, I'm getting on the internet. I think it was coming from the neighbor who didn't have a secure. He said, I'm on the internet. Look at this. I'm moving around. And it was, I'm sure, somebody living next door had Wi-Fi, and we were picking it up.
Absolutely.
Now, I know at my house, since I live a quarter mile off the road and I'm surrounded by farm fields, nobody's picking up my internet unless they're going to drive down the driveway.
Right.
You know, that would be it.
Sure. Well, the other part of having that router, that whether you have wireless, Wi-Fi, wireless access in your home or your business, or whether you're wired, make sure that it has a secure level,
Sure, yeah.
especially the wireless, and that no one can just pull up in the driveway. I could probably go in 1 in 5 driveways. I used to be able to go on any driveway and access internet. Their internet, which then also makes them viable for me if I wanted to. That's not my trait, to get access.
Sure.
Not only internet access, but access to their computers, to any information that I wanted. So it's important for users to have a password, even if it's at the home. They're not so secure if they just have an open Wi-Fi, as you said. And many homes, even some businesses you walk into, there is no password. There is no secure level that an individual has they can just access. That's just, again, one more layer to feel secure and be more secure. Again, nothing's 100%, but to enjoy the experience of the internet and potentially minimize that risk.
Sure.
That's one of the other things to do.
So now, tell me, what do you consider good malware? And
Well, there really is no, in a sense, good malware. And actually,
I know everybody has their own opinions.
yeah,
about what they like.
malware actually stands for malicious software.
Yes.
So they're Richard. That's
Well,
kind of.
have you heard of a program called Malwarebytes?
Yes. Yes. Well, Malwarebytes is actually provides protection.
Yes.
So that's a different story.
Actually, I have that.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
I have
Good.
Malwarebytes.
Good. It's always good to have a reputable antivirus and anti-malware solution in place
Mhm.
and updated, as you pointed out
And
earlier.
I make sure I update at least once a week, just to make
Sure.
sure. Sometimes it says you don't need it.
Right.
It said you're okay.
Right.
But I also have another one called Spy Hunter,
Okay.
which digs out a lot of Trojans and stuff like that if I run it. But
Sure.
I don't get anything.
Right.
I'm not out there anymore looking at the stuff
Right.
that I'm also going to say that I pay almost all my bills on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But I go right to my mortgage company.
Sure.
They have it's a secured thing.
Mm-hmm.
I pay my mortgage. I pay a little bit amount that I owe Home Depot
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
Right.
But most of those Home Depot and I'm trying to think. I think Lowe's also. They're through Citibank,
Mm-hmm.
so everything's pretty secure.
Sure.
But it makes life a lot simpler than
Mhm.
putting checks in envelopes and
Sure.
mailing them.
Sure. No, we're in an electronic era. So two things. One, we would recommend at Optimal Computing that you would have a cleaning at least once or twice a year. That is, a reputable technical
Okay.
person, and we can do that remotely via secure access, or we can actually come on site. We go to homes, but the cleaning is really important because it will provide you with a computer that doesn't have any, number one, pre-existing conditions, and as well, if there are any new ones, which do happen, nothing is perfect. Whatever you have installed, we provide industrial strength antivirus and anti-malware software, which we believe in. We use it ourselves.
Okay.
We customers have great reviews on it, but the fact is, having something in place, antivirus, anti-malware, number two, is very important, along with that cleaning. Those are two things that we, again, part of best practices we state you have. Because again, nothing gets everything 100%.
I'll tell you, I've got two computers. That's my computers. My son has a couple. My wife spends most of her time on her Kindle. But my old computer's still got XP on it,
Mm-hmm.
which I really like. My new computer has Windows 10.
Right.
I don't like Windows 10. I'm having a hard time with it. This is one of these new all-in-one.
Mm-hmm.
The computer's built right into the screen.
Sure.
And it's big wide screen, nice, and it moves around the internet faster than the XP one does.
Yeah, the changes in technology, it's interesting because there are a lot of customers that we have. Some are running XP or Vista or Windows 7. There's a range and a combination of Macs. There's such a range of different offerings that are available today. Some, like Vista, which is inevitably going away, need to be replaced and upgraded. And we do have a lot of customers who, well, by mistake, either clicked or didn't know that they were getting upgraded overnight to Windows 10 and wake up in the morning they have Windows 10.
Yeah.
And it's
and then try to figure it out.
yes, and then try to figure it out. But it's an educate. You know what it is? It's an education process.
Mhm.
And one of the other areas, that, again, education. We can help those individuals, and there are specific settings within Windows 10 as well that can change some of those screens, because it is it's actually quite beautiful what comes up initially. I've had that myself as a personal experience and seen that with others when they go from Windows 7 to Windows 10 or even XP. Or we have some customers that even have older computers. So moving into the next era, which is more automation, more screens, more things that people aren't familiar with. It's just about getting an education or information, or having someone come in and change some of those screens around. if they seem too difficult, to have you feel comfortable, to have an individual
I've had
feel comfortable.
this computer, Windows 10, maybe 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And now I finally think that I'm getting better at
You
it.
mastered it.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
getting much better at it.
Yeah.
But I'm the other thing that really upsets me is with Windows XP, my Photoshop, Quark, and some of those programs work, but not with Windows 10. With Windows 10, I have to rent Photoshop, pay them X number of dollars a month,
Right.
which I think is a good idea. I probably will do that because they give me all the upgrades then.
Sure.
But it's just one more thing, you know?
Yeah, it is a change in technology. There is a difference now in terms of software. You know, rent versus own.
Yeah, this whole thing,
You know,
I was really amazed
yeah.
about renting it.
Right. You do rent it.
To tell you the truth, it's not that much. It's like $9 a month or something.
Right. And there is some good economics in that, especially if you're running a business, a small business. But
yeah, but see, yeah, I'm consider myself actually retired,
mm-hmm.
but I used to use Photoshop constantly for websites,
Mm-hmm.
and renting it, and the fact that they're going to upgrade it and just keep upgrading it, I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. And it's always updated.
Yeah.
It's one of the I guess the answers in terms of more secure is that they own that software.
Mhm.
Whereas if you had it on your desktop or your computer or your smartphone, you would be responsible to decide whether you wanted the updates, when in fact that vendor, that manufacturer, that software company is now responsible themselves for keeping everything up
Right.
to date. So there are some advantages,
Oh,
and they're also housing that application. So it's also at a place where there is some, although it's via the internet, there is some more sense of security in that as well.
But I agree, and I probably will down the road get Photoshop on my new computer.
Mhm.
I still have it on the old one, and if I'm going to do something in Photoshop, I just jump over there and do it.
Right.
I'm so used to using Photoshop. In fact, we started with Photoshop at Newsweek,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, all the retouchers suddenly weren't there anymore
Okay.
because you could retouch photos right in Photoshop.
Right.
But I remember they brought a woman in who was going to teach us Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd ask her questions. She'd go to the book and look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the people over top of me and said, "You're paying her $500 a day, and she's staying at the Waldorf." I'd say, "Tell her we'll figure it out ourselves."
Sure.
I had a 13-person department. We just sat down and started playing with Photoshop, and everybody would say, "Hey, look what I found!" And,
Right.
and we figured it out.
Sure.
And first when I looked at it, I thought, "Oh no!" But then once you get used to those kind of programs,
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. It's more getting used to them.
yeah,
You
getting
know,
used to it, and then everything flows.
Right. I had a BlackBerry for years, an
Okay.
old BlackBerry, 8 or 9 years. In fact, my family, my boys especially, you know, they're in the younger generation is, you know, well beyond in terms of technology. I almost think they're born with it today.
I know.
You know, and they
Yeah.
own the greatest, best smartphone, and they know how to use it better than anyone. So I used to get quite a bit from them about having a BlackBerry. And one day it finally died.
Yeah, but Hillary Clinton was using her BlackBerry.
Right. One day it finally died. It was an older BlackBerry, and I never thought I wanted to give up those keys, you know, that the old BlackBerry had.
Mhm.
And I did, and I bought a smartphone. And within 2 days, I forgot about my 8-year romance with my BlackBerry. But it's that way with anything in technology. You know,
So
I think,
I'll hold up on the screen. There's my phone. And I'll tell you the truth, the reason I have this,
yeah,
my wife and my son have the smartphones. This
Right.
one comes free
right,
with the program, so that's what I carry.
right,
But my wife and my son, you're exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredible what the phones. Well,
Right.
my son, my daughter,
Mhm.
my daughter asked me to go to California with her in June. She was going to a wedding, and her boyfriend couldn't go, and it was
Mhm.
a wedding on the beach.
Mhm.
And I said, sure, I'll go out for a few days. It was incredible because she just would use her phone for directions.
right.
It had the GPS built right in.
Has everything.
Yeah. So that's probably, and I think you'd probably agree with me, that's probably where everything's going, is right to that handheld thing.
It is, and it's also, you know, the smartphone itself is also for the younger generation. There is some dangers, and I won't say security, but more the information. Whatever information that they're putting out there, whether it's pictures, whether on
Right.
Facebook,
Yeah.
or they're Snapchatting, which supposedly that Snapchat, a picture is supposed to disappear, but the younger generation has figured out that there are programs now to capture that information.
Right, yeah.
Or whether it's chatting or text, will affect their lives forever. And
Yes.
one of the things that we're doing, my son who works with me, Ben, he's an Eagle Scout, and so we're going to go out to the Boy Scouts, the local, some local places where there's a younger generation, even some of the churches, synagogues, and provide free education through Ben, because he's part of the younger generation.
Sure.
The effects that social media will have on you as you grow. So if you're in 6th or 7th or 8th grade and you don't think that, or 8th, 9th or 10th, or you're in high school and you don't think that, your social media has an effect on your life, it does, quite frankly, not only in the school system, not only with your friends, but your friends' parents, but as you go into college, the colleges themselves spend time looking at what you've done on the internet. And as much as one may think that things can be erased, there are copies of copies and copies. For example, I post a picture on Facebook and then I delete that. Well, 20 of my friends have liked it, so now it's on their site.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've made a copy of it and put it somewhere else.
It's multiplying.
Right, it multiplies. Plus, there's so many hops in the internet that things are stored. So what we're going to go out is provide an education to that younger generation, to talk to them about the effects that it will have. Recently, I talked to someone who works at a college, a local college here, and they spend one day every month, looking at applicants and what their internet, their background on the web is. So one individual sits and looks at Facebook. One individual sits and looks at Twitter. One individual sits and looks at something else. And they each have a responsibility when they get an applicant. They look at, and we can all go and look at everyone's information publicly, what they have posted. And in many cases, even though an applicant may have the right GPA, may have the right background, they're no longer an applicant for the college.
Sure.
For the reason that they posted some picture, where they're in high school at some event that they shouldn't be posting, or some information that they put across Twitter, or something else that they liked. There's a range of information that is published, and it's there forever. It's there virtually forever. And that's the idea or the concept that we want to put out to some of these, this younger generation and get their attention, so that as they go through life, as they're having that wonderful world in their internet experience, not only they secure, but as well the information they put out there, they realize that it's duplicated, and that it will affect the rest of their lives.
And I agree with that completely. As you said, other people copy it, other people keep it. No matter what, you probably can't delete it once you put it up there. So think about it before you do it. Think about it before you do it. Think about it before you click. It's also the same click before you send that picture, before you send that text, before you send that Twitter, before you send anything. Make sure you understand the implications of what might occur as a result of that. I agree. I think that's good advice. And I think it's really important that the younger people know that. It's not so much us old guys. Though I've grown almost like with the internet, but these kids, well, okay, it's the same as television. I can remember when I was growing up, we sat around on a Saturday morning waiting for a new TV station to start. But I always thought television had always been there. Right. So it's the same thing with all the younger people. Absolutely. I've seen little kids on their smartphones texting. Oh, from birth. I'm telling you, they're born with it now. Umbilical cord cut, here's your smartphone. Here you go. And but it is the future. It is. And I think it's exciting. But like anything else, well, look, before we had cars and people got cars, then there's the possibility of accidents. Right. My grandfather used to tell me he used to take the horse and buggy when he went out on a date because they could make out on the way home because the horse always knew the way home. Right. He said I didn't have to drive the horse. Very true. And my grandfather was telling me that. And I remember he's telling me I was maybe a teenager, and I'm thinking, horse and buggy? But yeah, look at what has happened since 1900 to now. Yes. Yeah, a lot of it's education. We're putting together a number of videos to demonstrate some of this as well. Short 1 minute or 2 minute at our website. Where actually it's www.optimalcomputing.us or www.optimalsecuritysolutions.com. Okay. And the part of the catalogs that we're building, both via YouTube or a number of technologies, and we're pushing that out to Facebook and Twitter and all the other blogs we've created. We're pushing out very short
we'll call them tips on accessing the internet, or while being connected to the internet, because you don't have to be doing anything while you're connected to the internet, and there could be a net effect. But as long as you have the right things in place, and those best practices, you have a better opportunity not to have an issue and make it an enjoyable experience.
You just said something that made me think. Do you think that if I'm going to tell you right now, my computers are connected to the internet,
Mm-hmm.
I never turn them off. I don't turn my computers off ever, unless maybe for some reason, but they're constantly running now. Is that advisable or not?
It's really not advisable.
It's not?
It's not advisable because while you're connected. So there is an internet, there is an open gateway. And if someone or an organization or somehow there's a way to access, because your computer's on,
Mm-hmm.
there's access. So if you don't have to have your computer on, why not turn it off? Not only environmentally do you save on the cost of electricity, but as well the use of your computer, because that computer still has a number of applications that it's working with. It has its power and its fan supply. So you also shorten the life of your computer, although they're built very well today. And for security level as well, not reason number 4, maybe in the first top 2 reasons here, is to turn it off at night or when you don't have it in use.
Yeah, see, the only time that I would unplug it if I went away.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just unplug, and mainly because I'm worried about maybe a surge.
Sure.
Or something like that, even though I had those surge protectors. I don't know how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I would unplug them.
Sure.
Or if we lost electric, I would unplug it until we got the electric back and then plug them back in again.
Right. A surge. I'm glad you mentioned that. A surge protector is great to have as long as you have the device that you need plugged into it. Because I've seen surge protectors, and then there are things plugged into the wall that need to be plugged into the surge protector. So ensure that number one, and then you have a good surge protector because there's a quality level. The other part we didn't even get to is backup.
Let's talk about that because we only got about 13 minutes.
Okay. Backup. We run into so many cases where people call us and they either have lost data or we have stories of lost data, when we go into new customers or establishments. And the fact is that information is stored on a computer or device, but it's always good to have a backup. And backup doesn't necessarily mean just a USB, those little drives, thumb drives, because they get lost, they break, they're limited on memory. We recommend a couple things. One is to have an external hard drive. They're actually very inexpensive today, low cost, that are plugged in, that automatically back up whatever you do. So it's like you would save information in a Word document or whatever you have on your computer, then it would automatically save. Or at least every couple of days, if you don't have it plugged in, make sure you plug it in. Most of the external hard drives, which is just a small little device today. Little box. You can store it somewhere next to where you keep your computer. If you're running a business, you might have a larger one, more industrial size, even potentially with power backup. Talking about surge suppressors, where that information is backed up. The other option today, which is great, is cloud backup. And there are reputable companies like Carbonite.
Sure. Carbonite. I know who they are.
So there's one example
for people because you hear that all the time.
Sure.
The cloud.
So the cloud really is the internet with information somewhere being stored somewhere. For a company like Carbonite, they have a number of facilities which are secure, which are protected, where once you subscribe to their service, you go to their site. We can do this as a service as well, and automatically your information is backed up. So whatever you're doing is backed up, and we call it in the cloud. You have to be connected to the internet. That's one of the things that's required for that. But everything's backed up. So if your computer has a virus that's devastating, or your power supply goes and you decide you need a new computer, or your hard drive crashes, which does happen, or there's a situation where information is lost, you still have a backup in the cloud. In fact, for a small business especially, we recommend both an external hard drive, which you physically have with you, which you can lock away, and as well the cloud. So in case there's like Sandy, a catastrophic event that occurs, and you don't have internet access for 2 weeks, well, maybe your business might be shut down part of the time because of Sandy, so that's probably a far out example. But the fact is, you still have a backup with your external drive physically with you. So many organizations, and even the home users, have a combination of an external drive and a cloud service, which is very inexpensive. The cost for that is very, very inexpensive.
See, I do something that most people can't do. I designed websites, so I've got certain websites that I have my own websites, and I'll sometimes throw information out there on the web that nobody can see, but I can get to it at any time I want. I'll FTP it out, but that's not what most people can do.
Right.
So that's kind of my backup.
Right.
And I'll actually I back up on both computers, and then I'll send stuff out and just let it sit out there.
Right.
And basically, I think having a website at a server, or a company it's almost like being in the clouds, because it's basically the cloud. What I really was hoping you'd say was nothing more than a big bank of computers.
Well, it varies what the cloud actually is. I mean, the cloud literally is something out in the internet, something out in the world, which a company either leases a space or owns a space where then they store information. And that could be a variety.
Okay.
So a company like Amazon, for example, they have a web services cloud, and they actually have different facilities in different parts of the country.
Right.
So you can be part of what they call the West or the East, or as well, if you're a major company, big corporation or a small company that wants to have a backup out of the country, you can also decide to do that. So you can have it in different parts. For the home user, it's not as critical if you're running a home business. That's why we recommend the external drive where you can store that information,
Sure.
and then as well the cloud backup from from a reputable company like Carbonite.
Carbonite. The one hosting company that I ended up using most time for people's websites had 5 mirrored locations. So when there was a hurricane in Florida, 2 seconds later, the one over in Arkansas picked up. Right. And your website was never particularly down.
Exactly.
And that was kind of the same idea. And they still do that.
Sure.
They have, if one location goes down, another one picks right up. And anytime I send a page out, that goes to every one of those.
Right.
So,
well, Richard, not everyone thinks like you, especially the home user.
No.
And then after the event occurs, when they lose the information.
Exactly.
In fact, it's not just information, meaning what they've written, but also their photos. So a lot of people are very protective about the photos they've taken over the last 5 or 6 years, which they store on that computer, and they may only store on that computer. What happens if something occurs?
No,
and your computer could be stolen. There's a range of different things. I don't want to create this devastating world of disaster. To be cautious and to have a backup is the best way not to have that occur.
But with most things in life, you're cautious.
Right.
You lock your doors at night or whatever.
Sure.
So you got to, and this is just because that computer's sitting there doesn't mean that computer is going to constantly work for you.
Right. Well, that's a very good point. People lock their doors. They have alarm systems.
Yeah.
You get in your car. You put on a seatbelt. You drive carefully. There's all kinds of, different airbags that pop out if you do have an accident.
Right.
You get oil changes. You get your car tuned up. And the same thing, a computer should be thought of as well. That it needs a tune-up. That it needs the right software running to prevent any kind of potential hazard that might occur.
I think what probably happened is computers suddenly. I got caught up in them, and then suddenly there were home computers, and it happened so quick that it's overwhelming a lot of people.
True, and there's also the trust that one might have, not knowing. A lot of these big corporations publish in the papers. They have to by law certain breaches. So you read about X company or Y company, and they 10,000 or 100,000 or 1 million records were stolen. But you don't hear about the small businesses or the home user having that happen to them, but it's happening to millions of people because they didn't put in the those best practices.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. We got like about 5 minutes. Do you want to sum up what we've talked about?
Sure. I think it's very important. Here's the message for experiencing or doing a business or going on the internet, whether you have a Facebook account and you're just a casual user, whether you do your banking like Richard does, whether you're going to Amazon, whether you're doing research, whether you run a business off of it, it is always good to have best practices. And again, nothing is ever going to be 100% in terms of security or the risk of things happening, as we know in this day in this world. But the reality is an individual user, a small business, whether you're running out of the home or whether it's 20 or 50 people, can have the same luxury and be as secure as some of the largest corporations in the world today by, one, having best practices, by doing some of the things we talk about, being wary of a free internet, making sure that your internet at home or your small business is secure, making sure you have passwords. We didn't talk about that, but make sure your passwords.
We got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Talk about passwords. Most people post their passwords right on their computer. That's not very safe, or they have it on their smartphone, or all their passwords on their smartphone, and their banking account information. That's not safe. It's best to take your passwords and information, put them somewhere else. Also, not to use the same password for everything, because if someone's able to get your password for one,
then they'll try to use it on others.
Then they are going to use it for
sure.
anything else. That could be your bank accounts, your credit cards, your mortgage payments, your car payments. And so that leaves you very susceptible, not only for that one password that you've now given up in that one account, but also everything else. So best practices, real quick, because I know we have a limited time here.
We got 4 more minutes.
Okay. Four passwords, minimum of 8 characters long.
Okay.
A capital letter or capital letters used, and then as well the different symbols, question mark,
or
different
numbers.
signs. Right. And some websites require that.
They do now.
Some do
and
require
some will
that.
tell you that's too weak. Do
right.
something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. A strong password is actually more than 8 characters, sometimes up to 15. Depends on what program you're using, what password level.
I think that's the biggest problem is remembering all the passwords.
Sure. That is, we recommend this. Have a unique password for everything. Perhaps write it down and put it someplace safe.
Yeah.
Someplace safe. And change them often. That's another item on the list in terms of Computer Security 101 is make sure they're changed often. Perhaps once a week, perhaps once a month at the worst. But that just leaves one more variable that a hacker or a professional can get access to, try to get access, and usually it's through a computer program that
Sure.
they're filing out millions and millions of numbers and information to try to guess your password, and in many cases, it's the dog's name, my favorite food,
the birth date,
right? Which, by the way, then you're giving away your birth date, which is a
exactly.
Social Security number, birth date, or two pieces of information generally you don't want to give away.
I am so protective of my Social Security number. A few years ago, I had this company call me and tell me that I owed money on a Visa card or something. Well, I'm a junior. My father had died, and it was his account. So the woman said, she read off I said, what's the Social Security? She told me. I said, that's not mine. She said, well, what is yours? I said, I'm not going to tell you. And she got very upset with me. I said, but I'm not going to tell you. I know that was my father's. I'm sure that was my father's. I could check it.
Right.
And my father has passed away. And it ended. There was one of those companies that bought the debt for 25 cents on the dollar or something. They're trying to get anything they could out of me.
Right.
Calling me at every hour of the morning and all that kind of stuff. To the point when she'd call, I'd always say, hey, how are you? What's going on? But I knew it wasn't my bill. But somebody, I don't care who they're from, and you got you on the phone or anything, give me your Social Security number.
Right.
I'm not giving it out.
Exactly. Never give away information that you don't need to give away.
No, I'm not giving that social. I don't care who I'm talking to.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to give that.
Right.
Well, we're almost out of time. I want to thank you for coming. Maybe you could come back again.
Sure. I'd be great. I'd be more than happy to come back.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you again for inviting us.
Sure.
And we
Once
appreciate
you
that.
give your number or how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. The best way, real quickly, www.optimalcomputing.us or www.optimalcomputingsolutions.com.
Okay.
Either or is the best way. 908-731-7083. Direct dial number locally in the New Jersey area. We do service the New Jersey, Pennsylvania metropolitan area, and then as well regionally and even nationally via remote access.
And I have your card in case anybody contacts me. So we're set.
Great. Well, thank you again.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be right back with David White. I don't know if he's got a guest. Oh, it's just going to be David and I right after this little brief break. Okay, the mics are off. And I just got to turn this off. Stop. There it goes. Okay. Let me just make one quick thing before I turn the mics on.